The dark web. True scary stories. Our scary and horror stories are designed to send chills down your spine. Enjoy the spine-tingling stories thrill. Story number 1. The Bidding Room. Derek had always been tech-savvy, and when he first heard about the dark web, his curiosity got the best of him. After navigating through the initial layers of seemingly harmless websites selling obscure books or forbidden knowledge, he stumbled upon a site called The Bidding Room. The premise was simple. Items were up for auction, with a blurred image and vague description accompanying each listing. Intrigued, Derek decided to place a modest bid on what appeared to be an old book. Days later, he won the auction and received an encrypted email with a physical address for pickup, stating that shipping wasn't available. Curiosity pushing him forward, he decided to go. Arriving at a decrepit warehouse, he was met by a masked man who handed over the book. As Derek leafed through the pages, he realized that it wasn't a typical book but rather a diary detailing various disappearances throughout the decades. Panicking, he went to leave, only to find that the exit had been barred. A voice echoed, "Every purchase comes with a story. Now, you're a part of it." Derek's details would be the next entry in the diary. Story number 2. Echoes of the Past. Rachel had purchased a seemingly innocent vintage mirror from a dark web seller known for procuring rare antiques. Upon its arrival, she hung it in her bedroom. Every night, as she lay in bed, she'd hear whispers, so faint she could barely make them out. She chalked it up to the old house she lived in or perhaps her imagination. One evening, the whispers became clear, and she realized they were cries for help. As she approached the mirror, she saw a hazy figure trapped inside, mouthing the words, "Free me." Researching the origins of the mirror, she learned of a sorcerer from the 1700s who trapped souls within objects. She knew she had to free the trapped spirit. One night, she shattered the mirror. However, instead of freedom, the act released all the trapped souls, who were now angry and seeking vengeance. Story number 3. Digital Footprints. John was a cybersecurity expert, but even he couldn't resist the allure of the dark web. One day, he found a site that offered detailed personal information for a price. For fun, he decided to search his name. To his horror, not only did the site have all of his details but also displayed a live feed of his own bedroom. Panicking, he disconnected his devices, but the damage was done. Over the next few weeks, he received anonymous threats, demands, and bizarre parcels at his doorstep. Finally, an email arrived with a single instruction: transfer $50,000 in Bitcoin or everyone you know will receive your deepest secrets. John realized he was no longer the watcher, he was the watched. And in the digital realm, no one was truly safe. Story number 4. The Cursed Drive. Allison, a digital enthusiast, was scrolling through a marketplace on the dark web when she found an offer for a USB drive with cursed content. Thinking it was a mere gimmick, she decided to buy it. A week later, a plain envelope with the drive inside was delivered to her home. When she plugged it into her laptop, a simple text file opened up by itself, containing the words, "Thank you for freeing me." Unsettled but skeptical, she deleted the file and went to bed. The next morning, Allison found her desktop background changed to a black and white photo of an old Victorian house. The next day, a haunting lullaby played out of nowhere. By the third day, she saw shadowy figures in her peripheral vision. Desperate, she threw the drive into the river. But the next morning, the drive was back on her desk, with another text file reading, "You can't get rid of me." Story number 5. The No End Game. Kevin had always been a fan of online gaming. One day, he received an anonymous message about an underground game on the dark web known only as the number Endgame. Curiosity piqued. He used the provided link to access the game. The interface was simple, just a chat room with a digital board game. As he played, the game asked increasingly personal questions, which Kevin answered thinking it was part of the fun. The final challenge was a dare. Stay inside your house for the next 48 hours. Finding it easy, Kevin complied. But as time passed, he noticed his food disappearing faster than he was consuming it, and strange noises echoed throughout his home. On the final hour, a notification from the game popped up: "You've had a visitor. Better check your closets." Kevin realized the game had been a ruse. Someone had been inside his house the entire time. Story number 6. Virtual Reality Nightmare. Sarah purchased a discounted VR headset from a dark web seller. Upon trying it, she was transported to incredibly lifelike scenarios, from beautiful landscapes to thrilling adventures. But one day, she found herself in a replica of her own home within the VR world. Confused, Sarah began to explore the digital version of her home. But she soon noticed something was off. Every time she looked into a mirror in the virtual realm, a grotesque and disfigured version of herself stared back. Growing more disturbed, she tried to remove the headset but couldn't. Panic set in. The disfigured reflection began to chase her throughout her digital home. When she finally managed to tear off the headset, she was drenched in sweat and trembling with fear. She swore never to use the device again. But that night, as she tried to sleep, she heard a whisper from the corner of her room, "I've crossed over." Turning on her bedside lamp, the disfigured reflection stood at the foot of her bed. Story number 7. The Artist's Secret. Leanne, an art enthusiast, found a listing on the dark web for a mysterious painting said to be the work of a reclusive artist. The painting depicted a beautifully serene forest. Intrigued, she purchased it and hung it in her living room. But over the next few days, she noticed something peculiar. The painting seemed to change. What was once a peaceful forest became darker, with shadows of figures lurking behind the trees. As days went by, these figures grew closer and more defined, revealing haunting, hollow-eyed faces. Leanne decided to research the artist and found out he had disappeared years ago under mysterious circumstances. Rumor had it that he would incorporate the souls of those he wronged into his artworks. One night, she awoke to find the figures had left the painting and now stood silently around her bed. The last thing she heard was a soft whisper, "You're one of us now." Story number 8. The Silent Auction. Dana received an anonymous email invite to a silent auction on the dark web. Out of curiosity, she clicked the link and found herself on a site showcasing various items with obscured photos and minimal descriptions. As she scrolled, one item titled, "The Experience of a Lifetime," caught her attention. The bidding was surprisingly low. On a whim, she placed a bid and won. The next morning, she received a small black box on her doorstep. Inside was a vintage-looking stopwatch. Upon pressing the start button, Dana found herself reliving the worst memories of her life on loop. Desperate, she tried to stop it, but the device seemed to have a mind of its own. Only when the 24 hours ended did the watch stop, leaving Dana traumatized and drained. Story number 9. The Diary of the Damned. While exploring a file-sharing site on the dark web, Max stumbled upon an e-diary titled, "Diary of the Damned." Intrigued, he downloaded it. Each entry detailed daily activities, much like any diary, but there was a twist. Every page ended with a description of someone's last moments. Dates, names, places, all matched unsolved disappearances over the years. Max wanted to report it to the authorities but decided to read the latest entry first. To his horror, it detailed his own day, minute by minute, ending with the line, "He shouldn't have read this diary." Story number 10. The Disappearing Channel. Michelle loved streaming movies, so when she heard of a private streaming channel on the dark web offering rare films, she couldn't resist. Accessing it, she found a collection of unsettling films, each showing people in various states of distress. Growing uneasy, she clicked on one that showed a person tied up in a room, with a timer counting down. As the timer reached 0, the room's lights went out, followed by chilling screams. Suddenly, the scene changed to show her own living room. The video zoomed in to show her watching in horror. On her wall, a message slowly appeared, "You're the next feature." Story number 11. The Empty Chat Room. Amelia, curious about the dark web's myths, entered a chat room simply titled, "The Void." Upon entering, she noticed she was the only user. Just as she was about to exit, a message appeared. "Welcome, Amelia." Startled, she replied, asking who it was. The response was chilling. "Someone who's been waiting for you." Over the next few minutes, the mysterious user detailed Amelia's past, revealing secrets only she knew. Growing more frightened, she unplugged her computer. But her phone buzzed with a new message notification. It was from an unknown number. "You can't escape the void." Story number 12. The Forbidden Recipe. Chef Marcus, always on the hunt for unique recipes, stumbled upon a dark web forum dedicated to rare and forbidden dishes. One recipe, The meal of despair was said to grant the eater unparalleled flavors at a terrible cost. Unable to resist, Marcus prepared the dish. The taste was out of this world, but soon after, he began having nightmares of a shadowy figure demanding a sacrifice for the meal he'd consumed. The figure's demands grew increasingly sinister, leading Marcus to a grim realization. The ingredient list contained more than just earthly items. The price of the forbidden dish was his very soul. Story number 13. Lullabies from the Abyss. Melissa found an online store on the dark web selling rare music tracks. One track, titled Lullaby from the Abyss, was said to be a recording from a haunted house's music box. Ignoring the warning that listeners never heard it in its entirety and lived to tell the tale, she played the track. The sweet melody was enchanting, but as it played, she felt an overwhelming sadness. Hours turned into days, and Melissa found herself unable to stop the lullaby or leave her room. Friends found her in a trance-like state, with the haunting melody playing on loop. Despite their best efforts, Melissa never woke up, becoming another victim of the cursed lullaby. Story number 14. Virtual Shadows. Cameron, an AR, augmented reality, enthusiast, acquired a rare AR application from the dark web that promised a hyper-realistic experience. As he launched the app, shadowy figures began to appear around him, interacting with the real world. At first, it was amusing, watching these virtual entities go about their business. But soon, they started acknowledging him, whispering secrets and showing visions of unsettling future events. As the line between the augmented and real world blurred, Cameron tried to uninstall the app, but the shadows persisted, revealing a grim truth. They had always been there, and the app merely unveiled them. Story number 15. The Phantom Delivery. While browsing the dark web, Jenny found an odd service offering a glimpse into the unknown for free. On a whim, she provided her address. Weeks later, a package arrived. Inside was a vintage camera with a note: "Capture what you can't see." When she snapped a photo of her living room, the developed picture showed a gathering of ghostly figures, seemingly unaware of her presence. Curiosity turned to horror as every photo unveiled spirits, some curious, others malevolent. The final straw was a picture of her reflection, which showed a shadowy figure standing right behind her. She returned the camera, but the visions persisted. The glimpse into the unknown had permanently opened her eyes to the other side. Story number 16. The Skinwalker's Site. Jake had always been fascinated by supernatural legends. While diving into the dark web, he found a site dedicated to summoning a skinwalker, a shape-shifting entity from Native American folklore. Disbelieving the legend, Jake followed the site's ritual. That night, he heard distant howls growing progressively closer. Peering outside, he saw a creature, a twisted mix of man and beast, watching him. Each night, it came closer to his home, mimicking voices of loved ones and clawing at his doors. Desperate, Jake sought help from a local tribe elder, who warned him that by inviting the creature in, he had forever linked their destinies. His only respite would be to roam the wilderness, keeping the skinwalker forever at bay. Story number 17. The Digital Seance. Kira discovered a dark website offering a digital seance to communicate with the deceased. Skeptical, she entered the name of her late grandmother. After a series of distorted static and electronic glitches, a familiar voice echoed through her speakers. "Is that you, my dear?" Thrilled, Kira began conversing daily. But soon, other voices emerged, pleading for release and growing hostile. Electronic devices around her home malfunctioned, and phantom messages appeared on screens. Realizing she opened a portal she couldn't close, Kira sought to disconnect from the digital world entirely, but the voices followed, whispering from the shadows. Story number 18. The Haunted Download. As an geek game enthusiast, Evan found a link on the dark web for a game called Eternal Descent. The gameplay seemed innocuous, navigating a character through a maze. But the background sounds were disturbing, faint cries and ghastly moans. As he progressed, the game's graphics deteriorated, revealing twisted landscapes and eerie apparitions. The character's image also began to eerily resemble Evan. One day, Evan's character was cornered by shadowy figures. As they closed in, Evan felt hands grabbing him in reality, pulling him towards the screen. His last sight before everything went dark was his character, now trapped inside the maze, screaming for release. Story number 19. Dead Man's Drive. Riley found a USB drive for sale on the dark web called Dead Man's Drive. The description claimed it contained the last thoughts and memories of those who had passed on. Intrigued and slightly disbelieving, Riley bought it. Upon plugging in the drive, a flurry of images, sounds, and emotions overwhelmed him: love, fear, regret, joy. But with each use, Riley became more detached from reality, preferring the memories on the drive over his own life. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Riley discovered a new file on the drive. Clicking on it, he was met with his own memories flashing before him, leading up to the current moment. The drive had claimed another soul. Story number 20. The Silent Marketplace. Browsing through the dark web, Helena came across a site called The Silent Marketplace. Listings displayed jars containing what looked like swirling mists, each labeled with emotions: despair, joy, fear. Intrigued, she ordered a jar labeled Euphoria. When it arrived, she opened the lid and immediately felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. The effect was addictive. As days passed, Helena kept inhaling the contents, each time craving more intense doses. When the jar emptied, she felt an extreme emotional void. Desperate, she returned to the site to order more, only to find her own face listed for sale, with a jar labeled Soul next to it. The end.